joining us, and we're here to look at trait 57 today, which is about trusting your intuitive insights. That was a totally intuitive process to find our way through this today, and we'll see how we do going forward here. But Andy and Anna, welcome today. I'd love to hear a hello from each of you, and thank you all for helping me troubleshoot.
Well, as they say, let your design, let your aura do the work. I think that just happened.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah. How are you today, Andy?
I'm pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. Had a long walk today, got some stuff done, and was invited here. So it's all good. Excellent.
Well, I'm so happy to have you here with us. So let's just dive right in then. Let's look at where we're at. We looked at this last week, moving into October, being about having the instincts to survive. And if I could move my little thing off of my screen, I could read what it says up there. Hang on, let me move it down here. There we go. Having the instincts to survive through correction and deep knowledge. So today is going to be more about the deep knowledge side. When attuning to sound, you can hear what can be transformed that's aligned with our values, to take risks, to fight for what's right, with an alertness to know what will benefit the whole. And again, this month we are looking at the traits of all being in the survival instinct. So a couple weeks ago, we looked at the 18, which was the instinct for imperfection and correcting things. Last week, we were looking at the depth of the 48, that deep well of instinctual wisdom. And we had such a great conversation. And I'm really sorry to say that just as a result of our mix up with our Zoom account, we lost the recording for that. So I hope that those of you that joined us remember and can share some insights with other people about what we learned there. And we'll catch it. We'll do another one the next time the 48 comes around. We'll get another level of depth out of it next time. And so today we're looking at the intuitive insight with 57, which is this deep instinctive attunement to sound. And it's so hilarious to me that I am this deep instinctive attunement to sound. I'm getting to listen to a fellow drilling deck boards together on my deck outside my window right now. So I'm definitely attuned to that sound right now. Hopefully it doesn't interrupt. But this is much deeper. This is about going into that, really listening, like we talked about last week, the survival instincts being about all of that unconscious body awareness that I think was the rich conversation we were having last week about the survival instinct being that really quiet, subtle signals we get from our body that the mind can tend to override. And so hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about that again today as well. And then as we go along next week, will be about continuity, which is about having that instinct for what can and can't be transformed. So, once we follow this path, the instinct to know what needs correcting, and then doing that from a deep well of this instinctual wisdom with an attunement to sound, being able to see or know what can be transformed, and what aligns with our values for the instinct for the integrity of laws. So that, that 50 is about responsibility and about taking care of, nurturing a family. It's part of the strength of the 50-27, which is all about caring for the tribe, caring for a family, and knowing instinctually what it takes to do that, what the laws are we need to pay attention to when we're doing that. And then looking at the game player, the instinct to struggle for what's worth fighting for, knowing instinctively what's worth our time and energy and our drive and motivation to rise up and fight for what is worthwhile and will keep us alive and thriving and moving forward. And having the alertness in the 44, that instinct for knowing what's beneficial for a group. And that also being part of the tribal circuitry of the message of sending the message to the tribe about what's best, the most beneficial for the group or for the tribe. And that being about the sense of smell. We'll see that when we get to that, when we get to trait 44. And so just sort of reviewing that again, and maybe you're remembering some of what we talked about last week. Wondering, Anna or Andy, if there's anything that's come up for you that you want to add to the conversation to just get us started.
I'll go. I think it's interesting that this 57 is about sound, and we just had some sound glitches. You know, that's how it works.
So right.
And
So true.
you know, the energy of the trait sort of demonstrates itself, you know, shows up in a variety of different ways. So that's just a very interesting thing. And yes, you know, all of these things play into it. The 18, the perfection and correction, you know, the well of wisdom. You have all this IT sort of background, so you figured it out. I would not have known what to do with that. And today, you know, the instinct, I have the 57 twice in the 3. So this was a very deep with the 3 is about several layers, but it's also one of your money makers, your livelihood, your places where you do your livelihood. And that was always a very significant part of my work and income. I taught massage. I was a health educator. I was a psychotherapist. So sound, even the way somebody was breathing, even the way the air would move around somebody as they walked, you know, these very subtle vibrational things. Sometimes in the 57, it's not a sound that we hear at our frequency. It's like dogs, you know, can hear sounds that are out of our frequency. And to me, this 57 is like that. There's frequencies we recognize. Sometimes it's in sound, sometimes it's in a whisper, but sometimes it's just in the frequency, the vibrational level, the tingle. Sometimes, you know, when people go, ooh, you know, that made me tingle when something's really right on. That's the same element here, because a lot of times it's not only nonverbal, but it's very subtle. And I just think that's very interesting, kind of how this whole little moment showed us what this insight is about.
Yes, thanks for that connection, Anna. It's I think the universe does have a sense of humor after all. At least we can see it that way. How about for you, Andy? Is there something around this whole month of October and the survival instincts, or anything specific about today's trait that comes up for you?
A good question. I was thinking, the discussion about the body last week. All that came up is that last night I literally set myself on fire.
Oh my goodness.
I'm British, right? I'm not very good at barbecuing, and I was experimenting with a gasoline can, and literally my right hand was on fire, these 2 fingers.
Oh
And
my gosh.
That's quite fresh, and it was rather painful last night, but seems to be okay.
Oh my goodness.
But physically, yeah, it's been a bit of a ride. I was around some people with COVID, and my energy's been very up and down, and it has evened out for sure. And then I get active and do something like that. I don't know if that's relevant to today, but and then in terms of the 57, I have 2 friends who just had a birthday, so I was looking at their charts, and although they share a birthday, only one of them is a 57, interestingly. If the other was born a few hours later, I was just playing with his chart, he would have been 57. The one who is a 57 is a musician. He accompanies, he's particularly skilled in the piano. He accompanies dance groups as they're learning to dance, and he instinctively plays the music they need, and people like to hire him because he's in tune with what they need.
Wow, that's a great example of this. There's that deep instinctive attunement.
And I think what I've experienced with him, I'm pretty sure his emotions tend to cloud him being able to hear the intuition in many areas. I think he gets caught in the emotional message. I've been dealing a little with him on his design, but he hasn't shown a huge interest yet. But it's interesting to have seen how important intuition is to him and how often he brings it up. But it's really his emotions that lead decisions, I think.
He's got the emotional awareness defined.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that's interesting too, because what we talked about last week was about, with this survival instincts, about how quiet the signals from this can be, because it was the first function that was developed in us. And then as we evolved, we went on to develop our minds, which are very loud and chattery and much louder than the instincts. So it's easy for our mind to get in the way of our, those intuitive hits and moments and senses. And like you said, Anna, sometimes it's just the sound itself, the vibration, or that really quiet voice, and the emotional intelligence being the function we're as a species most developing now, is learning how to be a little more aware of our emotions and have more words and language for our emotions. I think it's something like the mind is 4 times louder than the instincts, but the emotions are another tenfold stronger than the mind. So when you have emotional intelligence defined, it can really easily overwhelm the instincts and make it really challenging to pay attention to those body signals that we get, that we talked a lot about last week. Anna, you mentioned the shivers or the tingles, or that's often for me one of the ways I know something is true or real, or something I need to pay attention to, is my entire body shivers. And many of you probably experienced that. And there's a lot of information out there now being talked about just about our nervous system in general, and how connected it is with how much more attention is being paid to our nervous system and our immune system, and how they function together, and all the chemical interactions that go on, and how we've got these extra intelligence in our gut. We have as many brain type cells. There's more of those in our gut than there are actually in our mind. So there's fascinating information out there about the physicalness of our body and that mind-body connection that's being explored in many disciplines now.
Andy, you reminded me of something. One of my grandmothers was a pianist, and I mean, this is quite a while ago. And she used to play the piano for the live in the gymnasium for PE, physical ed. And they would dance and they would do these different exercises. She would spontaneously do the accompaniment. And then, as the years went by the late 60s, they terminated all that. But when I was a kid and she would talk about it, I thought that was the coolest thing, because really, if you're really trying to attune to your body, listen to your body's feedback. Yes, we have emotions, but without rhythm, without a sense of sound connecting to movement, we don't have the same level of instinct, of survival instinct. This is such a primitive element in learning and in rehab of all kinds, mental health, physical health, addiction health, is music and the way it affects our body. And the more we understand how music, much less our storylines, but especially music, how it affects our body, because that prompts our body to move. And being an innovator, maybe Andy, you can speak to this too. I'm often prompted by sound, when the innovators' strategy and authority, decision-making strategy is about being moved and speaking as you're beginning to act. And I find personally that it's often prompted by a frequency, which is a sound, kind of pre-sound. And that's what animals do. I mean, that's a huge survival element.
Mhm.
Interesting. I'm going to look for the prompting for sound, because I may well find that that's true, but it just struck me in the last few days, I have been so sensitive to sound in particular. It was Thanksgiving here in Canada, and my upstairs neighbors had people around and they were being perfectly reasonable, but I was finding it very difficult. And then I played tennis in quite a busy area yesterday, and I really couldn't understand why I was so overwhelmed by the people on the other courts, people running around in the dry leaves. I was, and I commented on to my friend. So yeah, I would say I've been very sensitive to sound in terms of wanting to block it out at certain times. And I'm quite amazed by how strongly it's been happening the last few days, and I really hadn't connected the transit. So I think there's probably something for me to learn there from what Anna pointed out. I'm kind of pushing it out, and there's probably something there for me to tune into.
Yeah, interesting. And that's because as an innovator, that's where you guys get your signals from, is from your body awareness and your body intelligence, and paying attention to these traits, especially the sound.
No, and to ground it even further, the instinct of a mother, there can be 10 kids in a room, but as soon as your kid starts crying or screaming about something or yelling your name, I mean, they can all be yelling something, but the instinct is to tune to your particular child, your particular, that sound frequency. I think it's comes after smell. I think smell is first and then sound is second in terms of the instinctive response that a mother has, because you can always hear your kid.
That's true. That's so true. They can tune out all the other ones, but as soon as you hear yours, it's that frequency that connects with you. That's great. I've got Leanna has her hand up, so I'm going to set you up for talking, Leanna, and then Lorraine has a question here. So
hi everyone. Thanks,
Hey,
Shelley.
Leanna.
Well done in getting through the bumpy beginning, and exactly what Anna said, like that you figured it out. I don't think I would have figured it out. So well done. Well done. And how funny that Anna pointed out that that's actually, meant to be. Here we are seeing it play out, the trait today. I just want to point out the chat is disabled. Is that what we're wanting?
Nope, I just don't know how to turn it back on.
Okay,
so I've said
no
just
problem.
use the Q&A.
Use the Q&A.
Yeah, But now
That's a
that we
great
have you
tip.
here, Leanna, you can stay here and chat with us.
Yeah,
And Lorraine,
well,
or did you have?
can I actually
Go on.
add? I just wanted to piggyback Andy, which often I find happens for me for some reason. He's always activating me.
Yeah.
So about the sound, about his sensitivity to sound. So I do not have this trait defined. I've looked at my people who I look at, none of them have it either. So that's interesting. So then I go to, okay, so how has it been activated in my field? And just a funny one, I work on my computer, and I have a speaker with a ritual, which, we all create little rituals for ourselves. And I put a certain type of music on that soothes me when I work. It has to be a certain type. It's like a background music. And that helps me focus. And I get it through Spotify. But I have never paid for I've never paid for an account, for a premium account. And if you don't pay for the premium account, most of you know, ads come on. And so I've just put up with it for months and months and months, probably, even a year. It was yesterday that I decided, I just felt this instinctual nudge that I needed to pay for the premium, because it wasn't about the money. It was about the sound. It was about consistency in the sound that would support my experience. And then I deserved that, or that, not even deserving, it just that it was actually important. And the other piece I noticed that I'd like to share with people to see if this resonates at all is recognizing the information that your listening delivers to you, and looking for the wisdom in that, or the information in that, or the direction in that, because obviously this one can be quiet, as you've pointed out, and we can be quick in our busyness and our loud environments. We can be quick to dismiss the information that we get. So the other piece was, I stayed up late last night when the house was quiet so that I could do some inner listening. I just sat with myself and just did a check-in so I could listen, because I was feeling that things were quite noisy through the day and I couldn't quite listen to myself. So that's, I think this week right now is a perfect time to be listening to within, and then just seeing how the sound, how it shows up, like, for Andy that way, for me this way, because it's sort of really fun to see how these traits activate in everyday life. That's it.
Had to unmute myself. Amazing, Leanna. Thank you. I love that. The deep instinctive listening to yourself, to your own inner voice, and having time in a quiet space to be able to really tune into yourself. It's a beautiful way to get to your instinctive insights as well. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm going to go to Rebecca, and then I'm going to go look at actually, let me flip to today's theme. Rebecca, are you okay if and Lori, okay, a few people want to talk. Everybody's been activated. Let me just go through the traits of the 57, and then I'll let everybody jump in with their thoughts too. So this is about the gentle, being able to penetrate to the core in the now. So the 57 is in the empowerment circuitry, which is all about being in the now. The extraordinary power of clarity, and like a chill breeze, can touch you to the bone. So at times can give you that shiver. It's the maximization of intuitive clarity that demands our existential attention. So just like Leanna was talking about, listening to your own inner voice as well. That deep inner attunement to sound that's constantly alerting you to your environment. And this is what Anna and Andy were talking about, especially as innovators. They're really tuned into this. This is what lets them know where to move to, where to be in order to initiate what they're being called to initiate. And yet we all have this if we're paying attention to it. you must be focused in the now moment to hear these messages from our intuition. And we may sometimes even appear deaf to others or be accused of selectively hearing what they have to say. And that can be when you have this trait defined, that it's kind of focuses you to be listening differently, and you may not hear what is happening around you. So this is, about paying close attention to your intuitive knowing in order to alleviate your fears for the future. And it's part of the creativity of the new era of the individuals. This is part of what's going to be the new background frequency as we move into 2027. So I have so much sound and noise in my background right now. I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to ask Rebecca and Lori to share what was coming up for them, and then Lorraine and Ray also have these traits defined. So I'm definitely going to mute. You don't have this, Leanna. I think, Anna, you do have this trait, and Andy and I don't have it. So I'm going to let Anna speak first, specifically to trait 57, and then we'll open up the floor and let everyone else add their experiences.
Well, like I said before, I have this twice, and with the quality 3. So this is, I would say, not just trial and error, but really experimenting with it, really learning about it, using it all the time. And I have a couple examples of how it works. Years ago, when I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I had been out of town, and I was going, there's a great big, slow, long uphill grade. And I had a new car at the time. And so I was finally able to go right up the grade without having to be in the slow lane. And anyway, so I was cruising along, enjoying my new car. And there was a truck in front of me. And I just had this brief sense that something wasn't right, that his tools, something about his tools, and I didn't know what that was. It wasn't a picture or a word. It was just something like that, some metal thing. So I slowed down, and then he slowed down. So I was in this, well, should I accelerate past him or should I stay? I mean, this is all just in the moment. It wasn't that logical in the moment, but I decided to just stay even farther behind him. And within a second, something happened where his toolbox opened, and there were wrenches flying and hammers and kind of dangerous stuff that could have hit my car, my windshield, anything, but I was far enough away that, I felt like my instinct was really shaping up around me to respond to it. So that was one example. It's survival. It's for your survival, for your health and welfare. And I have a gazillion stories about animals, but basically, if finding lost animals, finding my animals that were lost, all kinds of stuff, health about animals. But the important part about that is again the frequency kind of. I remember finding my cat. We had moved, so he didn't know the area that much. I put up signs, all that kind of stuff, and finally someone called and they told me their address if they had the cat. I remember driving up, and their porch looked exactly like our porch. The way the sun was shining on the porch in the evening was exactly like our porch. And I was struck by that, even though we're talking about sound, the light, light has a frequency as well. And I know that my little kitty, resonated to that, used that as sort of a little radar before he was oriented to our particular place. I just thought that was fascinating, because animals use this instinctive radar, that's what we call it, a lot of times, to survive.
Yes. That's a great example, Anna. And I do remember reading somewhere that for animals, I was surprised, but visual is their first instinct that they use. I thought they would have been much more attuned to sound or smell first, but I remember reading that it's really the visual that is their main thing they rely on. So, and all of us we all use all of them, obviously, and it's synesthesia of everything happening all at once. It's just being able to be aware of it and be, like you said, responding to what the information is you're getting. Your example with the being on the highway with the car, just knowing something was wrong. It's not logical. Don't know why, but I need to stay back here. That's a perfect example of honoring your instincts and not having your head or your emotions override you. So that's great examples. Thanks so much. I'm going to go to Rebecca now. Rebecca's had her hand up for a while, and then Lori and Lorraine. There's a few others who would like to speak. Rebecca, thanks for joining today.
Hi, thanks. Well, this brings up a lot of feelings for some reason. So I take melatonin to help me sleep now, but I used to always wake up around 3 a.m. And I always thought, anyway, it's always been kind of a frustration because I could be really tired during the day because of it. But I think one of the things in listening to the other discussion is that it's very, very quiet at that time of the night. And there's something really amazing about just being quiet by myself. So anyway, that was one of the thoughts that came up. And also part of this is the maximization of intuitive clarity demands existential attention. It's like being a very light sleeper as well. It's like having to, and it's so funny. This is why I love BG5 and in this process, because it's very easy to sit there and say, well, because of my childhood, but because that's the old paradigm, which is that we're all victims of something, sorry. And it turns out that we aren't, that this is part of my nature, to just be intuitively aware of what's going on, because that's what the 57 is. And then and so anyway, it's just been, the more we know, the more we follow our design, the more it opens up to us. And then the last story is, I remember I used to come home from work and I was tired after a full day, and my husband would be making dinner, the music is on in the background, and then my son so I'd come home, the music is on, my husband wants to talk to me, and then my son wants to talk to me, and my circuits would be blown. I'm just going, I cannot hear anything right now. And it took me a long time, and well, it took me a while and a few explosions for me to realize, okay. And I finally said, okay, if you want to talk to me, you have to turn off the music because I cannot hear you. And if you can only talk to me one at a time, it's way too overstimulating for me to have that much action going on around me. And then also like when I'm forced to be in a situation where there's a lot of noise and I have to tune things out, that's when it's easy to appear like you're deaf to others, because you can't, at that point, it's not being selective on deaf. It's just being, okay, I have to block everything out in order to concentrate on what's at hand.
Wow. Yes. So you have the 57 defined. Yes, and those are great examples of how this shows up, and how you've become more and more aware of it over time. Yes, thanks so much for sharing that, Rebecca. And Lori.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a friend with a 57, and we were going to take a walk this weekend in a canyon with her dog. And all of a sudden she turned her ear like to one side, and she said, "We can't take the dog." And I usually feel pretty intuitive, but I thought it's a nice sunny day. I don't know it's not going to rain. I couldn't figure it out. We put the dog back in the house. And we went into the canyon, and just as we entered, there was a coyote there. And they're known for grabbing dogs out of owners' arms. And so there was just something apparently that my friend with the 57 picked up in the frequency and saved the dog. So
Wow. Wow.
there's that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've just noticed with this particular person, she'll turn her head to the side sometimes and just jump to a conclusion that seems out of nowhere, but it's always correct. So I just,
Yeah.
just a manifestation of the 57.
That's a brilliant example of that. And it's so interesting that, even when it's instinctive and we know it's not logical and doesn't make sense, you see over time in being hanging out with your friend that she's always right. And so then you start to trust it more. It's great that she trusts it and has that example to give you. And it's so interesting that you notice how she tips her head to the side as if to hear from her inner ear, or maybe not even a sound that can be heard externally, but she's picking it up in that inner attunement to the sound and her environment.
I've definitely noticed a thing about turning the head, but it's interesting. She explains how her intuitions works, because I'll say, how did you know that? And she said it comes really fast, and if she doesn't listen, it'll go away. And she misses things. But if it requires a little bit more depth or thought, she'll ask me, because I don't have that fast thing. I get it some other way. And she can't seem to hold on to analysis of a personality or an emotion, let's say. She doesn't have her emotional center defined where mine is. And but if it comes to like a survival thing, it's quite uncanny. So
wow. Yeah. That's amazing. And that's a really clear example of how that works. It does just come once. And it's not something that will come back again. It's not something you can grasp or hold on to. It's in the now moment. And it's this quick. It's there and it's gone. It's there and it's gone. And it's really only about recognizing over time that you keep hearing these things that turn out to be true, and get to the place where you start to trust them, that they are real, and that they're actually probably as real or more real than any of the other senses we've got that are, our mind and our emotions, helping us figure out what we need to do and make decisions. So that's awesome. Thanks for that example, Lori.
Thank you.
Lorraine, do you want to speak, Lorraine? You said you've got the 57 3 times in your chart. And you had a question, how do we read the activations in observation? Have we answered some of your questions just by listening to the conversation, or is there something more you want to ask? Oops, there we go.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yes, I
didn't see that little icon before. Good afternoon, everybody. This is my first time attending a live. I am currently a student at BG5 with Karen Sherwood. I'm in my second semester. This information is really profound in learning how to identify and read and understand the traits. And right now in today's trait, it showed that I have a lot of activations. So because I'm new in assimilating this information, I just had some questions about how do we observe that when it is activated in multiple areas in your chart. So I do have the 57 3 times in my chart, both in transformation, conscious and unconscious. And then it is my driving force in my conscious side, 57 5. So I just wanted to maybe have some tips on how do I really lean into that information, since it's such a strong part of my design. And then I also see that I have the unconscious 12, but it's activated in this transit. And then I also have the unconscious 35, which then the strength itself gets activated with the 36. So with all of that information, I was just wondering how just want to observe it and try to piece it out when it seems like there's a lot going on there. And I can definitely feel it in my body. I did have some experiences in the past couple of days where I've done things intuitively and I've really felt it in my body of when to leave or when to enter or when to speak, but I still can't identify it yet, if that makes any sense.
Well, thank you. It's welcome to your very first BG5 Live. We're so happy to have you here. And just know that all of us struggled with all of this when we were first learning it too. So it's something you learn over time. And it's really about building awareness. So to know you've got the 57 3 times in your chart, that's pretty strong. And especially with this one, because it's the survival instincts are quiet. And you have this in your transformation, that's more of a longer term over your lifetime learning about it. That's what the transformation what's that called, life aspect is about. Having it in your driving force, you might notice, do you notice that you're driven a little bit by what you hear in the environment around you? That do you find that what you hear drives you to want to take action on something? So it's all about paying attention differently than you have before. Really, BG5 is all about making you aware of all of these different aspects, and it's multi-layered and there's lots of them, and it's why we pull it all apart to look at each one individually so that we can get some practice with becoming aware of it. And even what you said that you've already noticed this week, that your body has kind of the signal's been stronger this week, that you've had it's been maybe a little bit clearer for you or easier for you to know whether to go or stay, or intuitively and not logically knowing that you made a change in this past week. Were you more aware of that happening in this week?
Yeah, I would definitely say that if I sit and meditate on it, yes. And I know that part of the deconditioning is activating that driving force, right? That obviously as a manifester, an emotional manifester, has been quieted for a really long time on, not really leaning into the intuitive knowing, if you will. So I'm really very grateful for BG5 and bringing, this awareness to me on how to play with it. So I guess overall, how does when the transits come around, we just have to observe how they show up in our graph, or how they can mutate your experience, if you will. Like, is that how we read when the transits happen?
Yeah, more or less. And that's what this BG5 Live is about, is to focus on the trait of the week, because it's usually here for about a week, 6 days or so. And it allows us just to all focus on it and pay attention to, well, as you heard Andy and Annabelle saying, that they recognized in this week that they were more sensitive to sound, and Leanna even realizing that she needed time to just hear her own inner attunement to herself. So wonderful. I was going to ask you that next, is what is your career type? And so you've got Anna and Andy are both innovators as well. And hopefully they've given you some examples of how that's worked for them. Is there anything you guys would like to add to what Lorraine's asking about?
Yeah, I would just add, especially as an innovator, and you're moved by things, the movement inside you directs you. So that driving force is connected to being an innovator. But I love all your questions, but I wouldn't worry about answering them all. I would just stay in the observational zone of what affects you. What sounds affect you? Maybe like Leanna was saying with her Spotify, I hate the ads. They're very interruptive, but all of a sudden she became aware that that's not good in some way for her. So I would pay more attention to how sound is affecting you at this point. And
Okay.
you'll learn a lot from just that much.
Sure, that makes sense. Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for sharing with us today, Lorraine. And one more, Ray, would you like to say anything? Ray's got the 57 to 5, and then we'll move on to anyone who's got the 20, which is on the other side.
Yeah, hi. I have the 57 in the second quality, and I was just going to piggyback on what Leanne had said, because I have never been able to handle any commercials on television, on any streaming platform. I'm so sensitive. And I will walk out of a restaurant if it's the wrong sound. So yeah, I can definitely relate, and that was interesting from an undefined perspective. But I did also want to add that what's interesting to me about the 57 is that being a part of the so it's so individual in that it's so selective in its hearing, and I feel as I get older, I feel like I'm losing my hearing, and at the same time it hears what it wants to hear. We hear what we want to hear, and yet it has that intuitive side. So it's such a complex thing, and as we get to sit and think about it and experience it and sit with it, it's really a very magical it's a magical trait, I think. So it's very complex and individual. So I just wanted to share that that's the real magic of it for me.
Yes, thanks so much, Ray. And I don't have this myself, but I know many people who do. And it's also that that instinctive knowing in the moment about what needs to be said as well. I think both Karen and Linda Brontwith have this, and I work with them a lot. And they're just so quick to be able to know right now what needs to be said, or what people need to hear. And stuff just comes to them. And when they trust their intuition, it's all exactly what needed to be said in the moment. So it's been fascinating to get to work with people who have this defined and see how it works. So let's have a look at the other side now, how you get affected when you're connected. And this is about the shadow of this trait 57. So when you don't have the 57, but you have the 20 or the 10 or the 34, these are all connected. This is the inner knowing circuitry here of higher principles and love of self or behaviors and the personal power. So if you don't have if you have one of those traits and not 57, it can put pressure on this 57. And do you find it hard to tune into your intuition? Are you present in the now, know how to behave, or have your own energy and power, but feel like something is missing that connects you to your intuitive knowing about it? So this can feel like something's missing, like it's a gap. I can't quite piece it together. I know this stuff, but I can't quite get to it. So the problem it may be is that you might be confused and fearful of the future because you're not sure what's going on, how to behave in the moment, or how to use your energy. You may feel like you don't have what you need to survive. The solution is, you're designed to work with others that can give you those intuitive insights to direct you in the now, help you know how to behave in the moment, or how to use your personal power correctly to remove the fears of the future. So do we have anyone here who has any of these traits? The 20, the 10, or the 34?
I have the 34.
Oh, excellent. You have, what have you noticed with this, Andy?
Yeah, it definitely resonates. I remember around the time of having to choose what to study next at school and thinking of my future career, like total fear and freezing and not knowing what to do. And absolutely, I sought out people who can help me be in the moment. My meditation teachers, I lived at a meditation center, continue to really focus on that. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think, just recently that fear of the future is starting to fade. A little more trust is coming in. on the intuitive side for sure. That's been huge. But yeah, absolutely, a very strong sense that there was something I didn't know. Can somebody please tell me what's going on? It was like I think it was my unconscious mantra right through my childhood.
Missing that.
Yeah, of course I blame my parents, but I don't think that's true. May they rest in peace. I'm very grateful and sorry for blaming you for everything. Yeah, now I know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting when we do know, and especially as an innovator too, Andy, you need information. And if you're not getting what you need, and that's a big part of your signature, is it feels like any piece is missing, that can be even more nerve-wracking, I guess, and make you more anxious. So it's wonderful, though. So interesting how, and this is the other aspect of the shadows that we are noticing, is your shadows are also what you came here to learn about. It's what you go to school to become wise about. So, Andy, you've pursued meditation for how many years now?
More than 50.
Yeah, so really, and that's what often happens with the shadows. You get a real intense focus on that because it feels like it's missing. You feel like you have to find it, and it kind of drives you to learn about it. And so it's just another way to recognize the shadows aren't anything negative. They're just something to be aware of, to recognize where your energy is going, and to know that to become aware of what you've learned then over time by having this piece that feels like it's missing, that's kind of driven you to find a solution to fix that leak in your system, makes you wise over time. Now Andy's very wise at how to focus in the now through meditation. So and because it's open, you can find many different ways to focus on the now, meditation being one of them. But are there other ways you've also approached this, trying to find ways to focus on the now and get that intuitive connection with yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Other than an unconscious 44 of my survival function, the spleen is completely open. Yeah, it's been a big focus for sure. And yeah, now I know how much I don't know. That's how wise I am.
Right, exactly. and yes, our open functions are places where we are here to connect with others too. So when you have that wisdom and just that openness to connect with others, it's how we learn. So it may feel uncomfortable. The shadows can feel uncomfortable and make us nervous and make us afraid. So, and this isn't about getting rid of that. It's about being aware of it and recognizing why it's happening, which seems to take some of the edge off of, I don't need to be absolutely terrified because now I understand what's happening. I can be a little nervous and take that as feedback that, oh, I'm afraid of something. What am I afraid of? And what do I need to do to alleviate that feeling of fear? And by finding other people to work with, it can help you connect with those pieces in yourself that you feel are missing.
My daughter has were you still talking, Andy?
If you don't mind, I just had a point. Reminds me how important it is to know, in a business, to know each other's designs, to know that this is a area where I'm trying to learn, and we know somebody else can support that or offer that, or seeing who to listen to and when, and perhaps even, is this last few days a good day for like company retreats where the intuition is coming in, or doing something differently, having a quiet day at work, or the information this can give teams is huge.
Yes, I agree with that. But yes, it's the whole reason for BG5 is to really show us our own individual designs, but then show us how we're meant to connect with others in partnerships and small groups and in large organizations. How does all this interaction happen to support each of us to become our personal authentic selves? So Anna, you had something to say. Your kids
That was great, Andy. Yeah, I like that was perfect, because that's really what's being addressed here by the shadow of the 57. my daughter has the 2034. And so we have this real innate sort of connection. It's unconscious for her. She doesn't have the 57. She has the unconscious 2034. So she has a lot of energy, a lot of intuition, a lot of creativity, but she doesn't quite know how to organize it because of all that energy, that she's got. It sometimes just gets her busy and she can't sort of tune in to what's next. She gets distracted. But in our interaction, as soon as she gets around me, she kind of settles down and there's a little bit more of a, oh, here's what's next, or here's what's next. And as a kid, she didn't want any intuitive insights or any of that stuff. Although we did, we had wonderful conversations about astrology and stuff like that. So she was always tuned in there. But as she's gotten older, she's more able to utilize her own insights and especially when we're around each other, we don't even have to be talking about anything. All of a sudden, I'll be thinking about her and she'll say the very thing I was just thinking. So it's really fascinating to see how strong this is when you're connected, and she does feel more safe in the world because she's completely open in survival instinct. And I just think that's just fascinating how when we are connected to the other and how that works.
Wonderful, Anna. Thank you. Yeah, that's makes so much sense and just shows how it works in real life, that we find these connections, we attract these connections, and it's really about being aware of when it's working, why is it working, and when it's not working, why is it not working. So being able to have those experiences of sensing that, especially with this function, because it is so quiet and intuitive and instinctive and not logical and a little bit harder to pay attention to. So that's a wonderful example. Thank you, Anna. Does anyone else have anything you'd like to add? Anyone they know of who's got any of the other traits, the 10, the 20, or the 34? And if not, then I'll let everybody think about what we can be paying attention to then for the rest of this week with the 57 here. And just point out that if you're not sure whether you've got the 57 or not, or any of the other traits we've been talking about, that you can visit our website. We've got the free report. You can get your free chart. You can also get a free short report. And there are other more in-depth reports that you can purchase. And we have our past episodes of BG5 Live in our free resource library. And a lot of upcoming courses. Our next courses aren't starting until January, and we are working on putting on some, hopefully a couple of special programs through the winter here. We're still working on those. So just pay attention to our website. And if you're on our mailing list, our newsletter comes out on Wednesdays, and we'll also let you know when our next courses are starting. So thank you all for joining today. And we've had almost everyone attending being able to talk today. It's wonderful. Don't know if there's anything anyone else wants to add. But oh my goodness, I may have lost. We went over the hour. I have to get our settings reset. Sorry, everyone. Oh, some people are leaving. Anyways, I'll start with you, Anna. What would you have us pay attention to with the 57 for the rest of this week?
Well, since one of the key words was being penetrated, and sound is very penetrating, I would just sort of observe and feel what you're penetrated by and how that suits you or doesn't suit you. And like numerous people have already said, you can walk out of the room, or you can turn the sound off, or you can say one at a time or something. You can intervene with how something's affecting you, because sound is very permeating.
Yes, thank you. And it's enveloping us all the time. So being able to tune in and pay attention to what we're actually hearing. Because so much of this is unconscious as well, it's really about just bringing it into our awareness. How about you, for you, Andy?
Yeah, beautiful what Anna said there. Sound, I think I learned something today. I think the overwhelm I had is, this is a time for some good insights. And I had like a busy couple of days, visitors, house guests. And in fact, my oversensitive irritation is wanting to okay, this is time to focus in, and maybe not realizing that and taking the time I needed. I was quite giving of my time and energy. So as Anna said, don't be afraid to take or ask for what you need. We don't have to accept. We can say, you first, you next, or we can turn down or go for a walk, or even ask for time alone. And if you're in charge of a team running a company, seems like a very good time for listening and not necessarily responding too quickly, but just deep listening and reading between the lines of what people need or want or are saying right now, including clients.
Beautiful, Andy. Yes, wonderful. Being focused just on listening, paying attention intuitively at a deeper level, hearing maybe what's, like you said, not being said as well. Thank you for that. How about for you, Leanna?
Yeah, I can piggyback. I love what Andy pointed out about leadership. Like, I love how he pointed out the relational aspect of this trait, and how are you showing up listening to others, especially in business teams, whether you're in a leadership role or not. If you are, we're all, whether we are even entrepreneurs or working from home, or however your structure is set up with work, you are still relational. And what a great point to be making, that these traits, how they show up in you for yourself as an individual, and then how you apply it in the relational field to others. And, you could have self-leadership and be a really authentic, an authentic businesswoman, let's say, from my field. So you could be an authentic businesswoman that listens really well to yourself, but perhaps you are not as skilled at listening to others, so I just find that interesting, like that, just to think about the traits in terms of the relational field and the personal one when it comes to career and business, and how that's showing up, and how you can just, I guess I would call it just paying attention.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Leanna. Always looking at this context that we're in, and that we aren't, no man is an island. We're not here by ourselves. We are all here interacting with each other in various different forms. And even for those who may be working at home a lot as well, there's still lots of ways we connect like this quite frequently. And I'm sure in other businesses, this is happening as well. And being able to be aware of the groups of people that you're interacting with, excuse me, and just even knowing who's got which traits, and how we can individually each know ourselves, but then also get to know our teammates a little bit better, even if it's just by our own ability to listen at a different level, knowing all of this information now. I don't know if this happens for you, but I listen differently now that I understand a lot of the traits. I hear things coming out in how people speak or how they present themselves. That has me wondering, I wonder if they have this trait, or I wonder if they're this career type, or I wonder, just because we can listen at a different level, that deeper intuitive level now that we have more information as well. So thanks, Leanna. How about for you, Rebecca?
I think what I'd say is enjoy the silence.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for being here today. And Lori.
I would just say to pay attention to those fleeting intuitions or premonitions that we get this week while we're under the 57.
Beautiful, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining and coming for our bumpy little noisy ride today and focusing on the trait 57, and everyone enjoy the rest of the week as we continue to pay attention to what we can hear both externally and internally, and get that deep intuitive knowing as a result. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.